Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. I'm so glad that you joined us this morning because we have a lot to discuss, and we also have two very special guests. We're going to be talking with Bobby Ann Cox. I've been promoting that for the last couple of weeks. She's going to tell us all about Proposition 1 and her opposition to Proposition 1. We're going to talk to her a little bit later on in this hour. Then in the 7 o'clock hour, last-minute guest. And I knew this was going to happen, that we'd get a couple last-minute guests right before Election Day, where we're going to be talking with our good friend Mike Sapraicone, who's running for United States Senator. He's running against Senator Gillibrand. So you may recall we had him on, it was a couple months ago when he was in town in Chemung County for the fair. He stopped by the studio today. It is going to be over Zoom, but if you have any questions for Senate candidate Mike Sapraicone, please, by all means, reach out to that number on the bottom of the screen. We have a couple comments here from viewers from over the weekend. Also, yes, I guess we're going to talk about Peanut the squirrel. Not just a big local issue, but now a nationwide issue. We're going to talk about that coming up in just a moment. But first up, I see on mainstream news this morning, a man that deals with Israel government said that he thinks Kamala is better, but over 60% of Israel citizens said they hope Trump wins, which should be no surprise. Another comment, I'm a proud piece of Trump garbage. I voted last Sunday, and I approve this message. Well, good for you. Early voting is now closed, so if you have not voted yet, you'll have to wait until Election Day. You'll have to wait till tomorrow. What are your thoughts? What are you feeling? How are you feeling as we head in to Election Day? Tomorrow, we're going to have so much to talk about the next few days, aren't we? 76 million have now either mailed in or early in-person voting. Nationally, that's 76,183,090 as of this morning. Did you early vote, or are you waiting now at this point? You have to, but were you always waiting for Election Day? Okay, record New York Republicans vote early in record numbers, but Democrat turnout is in a total free fall. Republicans are heading to the polls in New York and nationwide to vote early in record numbers, but party honchos say there's no time for slacking with the White House and control of the House of Representatives on the line. Quote, for the first time since President Reagan, New York is possibly in play for the presidential race and will certainly determine the House majority, said Elise Stefanik, Representative Elise Stefanik. Republicans across New York and the country are voting early in historic numbers, but we must not get complacent and we must keep up the momentum and continue working to turn voters out, added Elise Stefanik. I'm calling on all Republicans to ensure their family, friends, and neighbors get out to vote early in person or on Election Day. So now it is on Election Day. This came out on Friday. Through Thursday, 1,964,393 votes were cast in the Empire State, including 701,000 in New York City. This puts the state on pace to exceed early voting totals during the last presidential election when at 2,507,000 New Yorkers voted early over 9 days. In the state's battleground congressional districts, many more Republicans are voting early than in 2022 when the GOP flipped 4 New York seats on its way to score a slim 220 to 212 seat edge in the House. Early voting results as of Thursday show state Democrats, quote, led by Kathy Hochul, are in total free fall, and no amount of spin can hide that, said Alex DeGrassi, executive director of Stefanik's campaign. New York Republicans are turning out in record numbers for early in-person voting, vastly overperforming our 2022 margins in every seat, some by 50%. Long Island looks great, as does the Hudson Valley and upstate. As of 30, there were 9.24% more Republicans voting than Democrats in Suffolk County. First congressional district where Republican incumbent Nick LaLota is positioned to beat Democrat John Avlon. So we have record numbers of votes from Republicans. Your thoughts? Did you vote early? Were you one of those record numbers of Republicans that turned out early to vote? We're going to talk more about voting, about the campaigns. There's some controversy, of course, that Saturday Night Live gave Kamala Harris a cameo on Saturday, of course. there's some pushback. So in, I guess, the interest of fairness, NBC then had Donald Trump give a 90-second commercial during NASCAR coverage, which I don't know. That I mean, you would assume that's kind of more his demographic. Is that considered equal? Did you see Kamala Harris on Saturday Night Live? I'd like to hear your thoughts on that as well. There is some pushback on that. But first, Peanut the squirrel, making it on the New York Post, and it's on Fox, and it's everywhere. A man from Elmira, whose beloved squirrel was cruelly killed by the state, said he was treated like a terrorist when 10 government agents descended on his home during a 5-hour raid. Mark Longo, whose pet Peanut captured the hearts of 3 million social media users, was stunned when a convoy of vehicles carrying officials from the State Department of Environmental Conservation and Health arrived at his Pine City home. Okay, Pine City. They served him with a surprise warrant, allowing them to snatch away Peanut and Fred, a raccoon he had taken in. So Peanut was a squirrel, Fred was the raccoon. They treated me like I was a terrorist. They treated this raid as if I were a drug dealer. They ransacked my house for 5 hours. They asked my wife, who was of German descent, what her immigration status was. They asked if I had cameras in my house. They wouldn't allow me to go to the bathroom without a police escort, who then checked the back of the toilet to see if I was hiding anything there. But worse than all of that, they delivered his gray, as it says here, fur baby to its death. The state claimed it had to euthanize both animals Friday so they could be tested for rabies because the squirrel sunk its teeth in the hands of an official during the disturbing raid. The test results are not yet known. Longo, who's 34 years old, cared for Peanut for more than 7 years, rescuing him when his mother was hit by a car. We rehabbed him for 8 months. We released him for a day and a half, but he ended up getting attacked. He never developed the instincts to survive outside. Peanut slept in his own room in their house in Pine City, just south of Elmira, of course. Fred arrived 4 months ago after being dropped off at their front door and split time between an outdoor enclosure and a room in their residence. Peanut and Fred were targeted and not other animals living on the 350-acre property because they lived indoors. Peanut was a star on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Even Elon Musk paying tribute, saying President Donald Trump will save the squirrels. Government overreach kidnapped an orphaned squirrel and executed him. Now, Longo, again from Pine City, said my phone is blowing up from people all over the country saying how much they love Peanut. I have people who call me and cry more than I do. Now he operates a nonprofit animal rescue called Peanut's Freedom Farm. The sanctuary is home to 300 rescue animals. He also has an OnlyFans account. Okay, that's good to know. Longo explained it is illegal to house a squirrel and a raccoon, but he didn't have the heart to keep them outside. The DEC said in a statement obtained by ETM that the raid was in response to complaints about Fred the raccoon, but Longo claimed they used him as an excuse to get Peanut. The only time I've ever talked to the DEC prior to this was when they got complaints from anonymous people on the internet for Peanut about 5 or 6 months ago, and that was before Fred. They used Fred as their go-to to get into my house. Have you been following this story? I mean, I guess I just heard about it over the weekend. The DEC claimed that Peanut bit one of its officials on the hand during the raid, but Longo said he did not witness that, and the official's hands were heavily protected. I watched everybody put gloves on before they entered the house. They had gloves that you get on an eagle to land on. He is demanding an investigation into the claim that they were checking the animals for rabies and filing a motion to get the medical records of the officials in his house to see if they actually got tested for the disease. Peanut and Fred did not have rabies, or I wouldn't be here talking to you right now. I've been around them long enough, played with them, cared for them, and I didn't foam at the mouth. Now, Congressman Langworthy, many, Trump and others react to this as well. I got some waves coming in. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Let's go to what our Congressman Langworthy, had to say. I join many of my constituents and people around the country who have contacted my office today angry and demanding answers from Governor Kathy Hochul's Department of Environmental Conservation. Reports are that following their unannounced raid of a home in Chemung County, the DEC agents have gone ahead and unnecessarily killed their animals. The pet owner has not been afforded due process, and now his pets are dead. This action comes today as reports have emerged of an illegal immigrant raping a 5-year-old on Long Island. This demonstrates the Hochul administration's deranged level of misguided priorities. In New York State, we have sanctuaries for illegal immigrants while innocent pets are killed. I demand answers and will push until the administration comes clean. That's from Congressman Nick Langworthy responding to what has become a national issue. Others going on Twitter to, as I mentioned, Elon Musk to comment on it. Donald Trump Jr. weighed in saying it's time to vote out a government that will kill a pet squirrel but will gladly allow 600,000 criminals with 13,000 murderers and 16,000 rapists knowingly into our country. Maybe Peanut's murder will be the catalyst for real change and awakening to our government's broken priorities. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. posting, are these the same guys that killed my whale and my bear? And what happened to the head? Just asking for a friend. Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but it's not going to be the whole focus of the show. But there is a couple more comments on this, and then we'll move along. We've got a lot to cover, obviously. Day before election, and we're going to hear from Bobby Ann Cox here in just a little bit, and then Mike Sapraicone running for United States Senate. I'm glad that they could both be on the program. Many people asked for Bobby Ann Cox to come back on, and Mike Sapraicone for that matter, but Bobby Ann Cox, because of Proposition 1, she's very outspoken. As she has said on this program, she is not a Republican. But she sees that Proposition 1 is wrong and that it shows potential for very, very bad things in the future. We're going to hear all about it coming up a little bit later on in this hour, but stay with us. We're just getting started on this Monday morning edition of Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. Frankly Speaking Roof Cam is brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. So many comments coming in this morning. Everybody's fired up for Election Day. Ken in Horseheads writes, I know this is off topic, but since I have a daughter that goes into New York City occasionally, and I know others that also have friends and family in the big city, I thought it was important to let others know. A new law was passed in New York City because African Americans and Latinos are charged with jaywalking at a higher rate than whites. They determined that the law making jaywalking illegal was racist, and they just legalized jaywalking, but strongly suggests that people still cross at the crosswalks. While this sounds like a relatively small thing in today's world, it shows the never-ending, pardon me, my nose is all stuffed up, never-ending pandering on the left to send the message to African Americans and Latinos and the communities, vote for the Democrats. We are the ones looking out for you. So we should all tell someone we know while driving New York City to keep your head on a swivel, looking for someone crossing between parked cars, crossing against green lights, or literally anywhere they want. What I could find online is that in the past 5 years, 200 people died from jaywalking in New York City. I assume those numbers will increase due to the eliminating of this law. Another thing that needs to be thought about is that when someone was hurt or killed while jaywalking, they were breaking the law, and the driver had a good chance of not being charged. Now that it is legal, the drivers are wholly responsible. Thank you, Ken. Next up, morning, Frank. Well, good morning. New York State, and Kathy Hochul, soft on criminals, tough on squirrels. What a sad commentary. It very much is. And there's a piece here from Miranda Devine that says how Liz Cheney and Peanut became the bizarre closing symbol of the 2024 election. Freedom versus authoritarianism. We're going to talk about that in just a second. A couple more comments from viewers. Here in Tennessee, it's legal to have squirrels and raccoons as pets. It was a ridiculous waste of taxpayer money. Can't believe they raided over that. I agree. Someone asked a question in reference to what Nick Langworthy released a statement, and he asked about the man who raped a 5-year-old on Long Island. They ask, is that the same one that didn't show up for the court arraignment? Yes. Wilson Castillo Diaz, 27, is a Honduran migrant who crossed into the United States via the Rio Grande Valley in 2014 before Border Patrol agents detained him. The police said Mr. Castillo Diaz skipped an immigration hearing and was last living in Westbury, New York, the authorities have said. So there's all our updates. Okay, so Miranda Devine said Peanut the Squirrel and Liz Cheney are two bizarre closing symbols of this election campaign. If we read the tea leaves, we can see how they represent what's really at stake on Tuesday, which is freedom versus authoritarianism. Only it's the reverse of what Kamala Harris has been saying. Hint, it's her political compatriots who killed the squirrel. The brutal seizure and euthanasia of a pet squirrel by New York State officials and the embrace by Harris of the turncoat Republican daughter of the architect of the Iraq War are really two sides of the same coin. The authoritarian nature of the modern Democratic Party and its deep state allies. First to Peanut. The cute pet squirrel was orphaned when his mother was hit by a car 7 years ago and adopted by an upstate New Yorker, engineer Mark Longo. Last week, Peanut and his friend, Fred the raccoon, were seized by officers of the Department of Environmental Conservation and Health, who raided Longo's home in Pine City and searched it for 5 hours. The animals were taken away and euthanized. According to a statement from the DEC, they were acting on complaints about, quote, the potentially unsafe housing of wildlife that could carry rabies and the illegal keeping of wildlife as pets. Longo complained on a TMZ video that has gone viral. 10 to 12 DEC officers raided my house as if I were a drug dealer. 4 departments and a judge signed off on a search warrant for a squirrel and a raccoon, he said, as his wife wept quietly behind him. Peanut became the world's most famous squirrel. He became the first squirrel on TikTok to ever hit 1 million followers. The seizure and killing of Peanut and Fred by jackbooted bureaucrats was big government overkill, reminiscent of the FBI's armed raids on Trump supporters and pro-life Christians. An undercurrent of this campaign, while murderers and rapists are set free to roam the country, the full might and power of the government will come down like a hammer on good citizens and their innocent pets. In that tyrannical echo that propelled the late Peanut to become a viral sensation online, an instant emblem of the Trump campaign over the weekend, with Elon Musk, Don Jr., and Robert F. Kennedy all weighing in on his plight. There was even a song portraying the squirrel as a MAGA martyr, and Trump as a modern-day saint of Francis of Assisi, surrounded by cute squirrels along with the cats and dogs who have been allegedly eaten by illegal immigrants. Government overreach kidnapped an orphaned squirrel and executed him, Musk said. Trump supporters recognize the sad death of Peanut as a harbinger of authoritarian rule they fear will escalate in the future of the Harris and Walz administration, with increased weaponization of the national security agencies, lawfare, and arrest of political dissenters. As a far-left radical pretending to be a moderate, Harris's past pronouncements belly her intentions, such as a 2007 video when she was San Francisco district attorney and declared, quote, just because you legally possess a gun in the sanctity of your locked home doesn't mean we're not going to walk into that home and check to see that you're being responsible and safe in the way you conduct your affairs. Then there is a strange elevation to sainthood by Democrats, the Trump-deranged war hawk Liz Cheney, once the highest-ranking Republican woman in Congress and the daughter of Dick Cheney, the vice president, once loathed by Democrats as the warmonger hell-bent on regime change in Iraq. For days, the Harris campaign and the media toadies have went after Donald Trump for daring to point out that Cheney, now a Harris surrogate, was a radical war hawk, like her father, eager to send other Americans to war. Quote, let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. You know, when the guns are trained on her face, they're all war hawks when they're sitting in Washington in a nice building saying, oh, gee, well, let's send 10,000 troops into the mouths of the enemy. It's a sentiment that used to be standard liberal rhetoric for years, as former Democrat Glenn Greenwald pointed out, until neocons became their foreign policy gurus. As the New York Times pointed out over the weekend, Democrats now have a vastly more favorable opinion of the CIA and the FBI and other security institutions than do Republicans, with a 62-point favorability gap for the FBI, for instance, a reversal from past years before the agencies were politicized. The transformation of the Democrat Party into the party of war and Cheney's was solidified at the DNC convention when Harris was installed by the political machine without receiving a single vote and thundered about a lethal military. It was no accident the center stage of that convention was former CIA Director Leon Panetta, leading light of the CIA's Dirty 51 election interference operation in October of 2020. That our intelligence services have been politicized in such a way should frighten every American, says Miranda Devine. What might help Democrats today can easily turn against them tomorrow. They want a puppet who can carry out their foreign policy agenda, not an uncontrollable president like Trump who approached problems with common sense, who had Iran broke and on its knees, unable to find proxies to attack Israel, who had Vladimir Putin in a box, not invading his neighbors like he did under Biden and Obama, who tamed Kim Jong-un, who laid down the groundwork for peace in the Middle East and the Abraham Accords, who vanquished ISIS, and who started no wars. To this deep state cabal, what Obama advisors called the blob, Trump is an existential threat not to democracy, as they pretend, but to their power and control of the presidency. Freedom from these puppeteers is what is at stake on Tuesday, as Trump and his supporters understand only too well. There you go. Tying those together. Now, there's a lot more to talk about. Speaking of Governor Hochul, well, we got to take a break. We're going to talk about Governor Hochul, and I see some comments coming in as well. Keep them coming in. We're getting excited. Day before election. Are you ready? How are you feeling? What do you think about peanuts? Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Sorry, again, tongue twist. I'm getting so excited. We have so much to cover, and there's so many comments. Jaywalking, really? Democrats aren't looking out for you. They're watching your every move to make sure you comply. Thank you very much. A different comment, obviously, from a different viewer. I think this is such a sad story and angers me because it shows the blatant overreach by our governor and DEC. We seriously spend time and energy on killing a pet, but we allow children to be harmed by pedophiles and trafficked daily. Thank you for that comment. I know it's got a lot of people upset, and rightfully so. Another comment from Ken. The top Democrat in New York, Hochul, is so full of love and joy for the people she works for that she said if you're voting for the Republicans on the ticket in New York, you're anti-women, anti-abortion, and anti-American. She did say that. Isn't it amazing? She's so desperate for some wins because she did so poorly last time. She wants to be liked. She wants to be a quote-unquote Democrat elite. She just doesn't have it. Governor Hochul on Saturday called New Yorkers who vote for Republican House candidates anti-American and anti-women, a smear that sparked anger across the Empire State and beyond, as a matter of fact. Quote, if you're voting for these Republicans in New York, you are voting for someone who supports Donald Trump, and you're anti-woman, you're anti-abortion, and basically you're anti-American. You just trashed American values and what our country is all about over and over. Now, the Democrat governor spewed her incendiary remarks less than a week after Democrat President Biden dismissed Donald Trump supporters as garbage. So you have Biden calling Trump supporters garbage. You had Mark Cuban attacking Republican women, saying that Trump did not have any intelligent, strong women around him. And now you have Governor Hochul saying that you're anti-woman, anti-American, if you support the Republicans in New York. Hochul also previously divisively targeted New York Republican politicians back in 2022, telling them to just jump on a bus and head down to Florida where you belong, okay? Get out of town because you don't represent our values. Republicans immediately blasted the governor over her latest sneers, and even Democrat strategists said demonizing a large segment of voters as anti-American was not helpful to the candidates. Quote, this is about as helpful as a severe migraine. It's never a good thing to identify a large segment of voters as un-American, said New York ex-Democratic Representative Max Rose. Kathy Hochul doesn't represent a majority of Democrats anywhere, said Rose. Yeah, I mean, all you can think is the hate. But see, she wants to be a kingmaker so bad, and she just doesn't have it. I mean, you saw her speech awkwardly presented at the DNC. I don't even know. I mean, she screwed up right at the beginning. She just isn't at that level. State Republican Party Chairman Ed Cox said she's smearing at least one half of American voters and all Trump voters. Mike Lawler said Governor Hochul has once again disgraced herself in the state of New York by calling supporters of some of the most bipartisan members of Congress anti-American. It's shameful and wrong and shows exactly how much of a partisan hack Kathy Hochul really is. She must be voted out in November of 2026, but only after Republicans hold the House thanks to our New York GOP delegation. He noted that his Democrat opponent, ex-Representative Mondaire Jones, didn't appear with Hochul when she was in the 17th House District in the Hudson Valley Saturday. Upstate Representative Elise Stefanik, who we've heard from a lot this morning, chair of the House Republican Conference, called Hochul the worst governor in America after seeing the clip. And the state conservative chairman, Gerard Kaser, said he was amazed in a scathing rebuke of the governor. It demonstrates why she is so unpopular. Her statement is asinine. Republicans said the statement is so offensive that it looks as if Hochul is angling for a job in the Harris administration if the vice president wins, because it certainly is not a plus for a re-election bid in 2026. Siena released a poll last month that showed only 36% of New Yorkers gave Hochul a favorable rating, while 51% viewed her unfavorably. A decade ago, you may recall then Governor Andrew Cuomo said conservatives have no place in New York. Remember that? Who are they? Right to life? Pro-assault weapons? Anti-gay? If that's who they are, they have no place in the state of New York because that's not who New Yorkers are. So there's something about the governors of New York that don't tend to like their supporters. They don't tend to like the people of their state. But yes, Governor Hochul calling you, if you are going to vote for Trump or already have, that you are anti-American, you're anti-women. Your thoughts on what the governor had to say. The New York Post editorial board has a piece on this, but I want to take a short break because I do have to play a little bit of catch up because our interview with Bobby Ann Cox is coming up, and in full disclosure, it was pre-recorded, and it is pretty lengthy. So that's going to be coming up here in just a little bit. Then we'll be talking later on with Mike Sapraicone, who's running for United States Senator against Senator Gillibrand. So we'll be talking to him in the 7 o'clock hour, right around 7:20, 7:15, 7:20. So right now we're going to take a short break, and then when we come back, some more of your comments, and we'll talk a little bit more about Governor Hochul. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Thank you again to Boss Security for bringing us the roof cam. Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking, the day before election. All right, we got a couple comments. What planet does Hochul live on? Good question. Another comment. Have you noticed that other than the garbage Zoom call, his inability, meaning Biden, his inability to pin a medal on in Philadelphia and threaten to slap people in the you-know-what, Biden hasn't been seen much. Could it be that his handlers are busy trying to get their next puppet elected, and his handlers don't have time to tell Biden what to do, which leaves no one running the country? I think they are definitely scared that he'll make another comment like the garbage comment. So I do think they are keeping him out of the limelight because you never know what you'll get from Biden at this point. But now Governor Hochul, back to Governor Hochul. Not long after her minions pulled off the 5-hour raid that killed Peanut the squirrel and Fred the raccoon, Governor Hochul took to MSNBC to call out everyone voting for these Republicans in New York as anti-American. Now, this is coming from the New York Post editorial board. No wonder she's one of Joe Garbage Biden's favorite governors. Still smarting from Nancy Pelosi's epic slap over helping Republicans take multiple New York House seats in 2022, Hochul has gone all in on flipping some back, but mostly by not showing up in person. Even lefty Mondaire Jones didn't want the moderate governor campaigning for him. That's because Hochul's made herself toxic across most of the state with her plans to inflict congestion pricing tolls on commuters after Election Day, her failure to fix the state's insane criminal justice reforms, her cowardice in combating anti-Semitism, and her do-nothing-but-spend approach to the migrant crisis. To be clear, Hochul has helped her fellow Democrats behind the scenes with a bit of gerrymandering and packing the state's top courts to allow for that, and a ton of fundraising. She also paused congestion pricing, reportedly after House Democrat leader Representative Hakeem Jeffries told her it would slam Democrat candidates. She's even whitewashed crime stats to make it seem like Democrat mismanagement isn't running the state into the ground. Yet she felt still obliged to also go on TV to mouth the party line, even though it's exactly what cost her and New York Democrats so badly just 2 years ago. Recall, Hochul spent most of the 2022 campaign running on abortion, ignoring voters' growing concerns about crime until the 11th hour. Yet her MSNBC screed went back to insisting a vote for any Republicans, not just anti-American, but also anti-women and anti-abortion. That echoes the campaign of just about every swing district New York Democrat, as well as the Harris-Walz ticket, and it's utter nonsense. There is no secret Republican plot to pass some national abortion ban, and anyway, they can't possibly get the votes to pass it, any more than Democrats can get the votes to pass national pro-choice laws, even if Harris wins in a landslide. But Democrats from Harris on down, to the likes of teacher union pawn John Mannion, career open borders advocate Josh Riley, and Hempstead hack Lauren Gillen, don't dare address voters' biggest worries because their parties created all of them. Inflation, the migrant mess, rising crime, insane pump prices, you name it. Democrats are the party of banning gas stoves and non-electric cars, of waving in border jumpers without even any screening to stop gangs, of higher taxes and even higher spending, of censoring dissent, and of imposing lunatic trans and demented DEI ideologies, especially on our schools, where they oppose any hint of choice for families. They're the party of lies, like the long campaign to insist Joe Biden was fine to run for re-election. Will the likes of Harris or Hochul ever apologize for that gaslighting? No. They're just offering more of it. If you vote Republican, Hochul preened on MSNBC, you just trashed American values and what our country is all about over and over. Take a look in the mirror, Governor. Trashing American values is now the Democratic agenda. That's from the New York Post. All right. We've got to take a short break because when we come back, we're going to talk, well, we have a little bit of time here, but we're going to talk with Bobby Ann Cox. She is going to join us to talk about Proposition 1. That is, of course, on the back of your ballot. So if you go to vote on Election Day, because early voting is now over, but if you go on Election Day, remember to flip your ballot to the back. One other last thing, just to give you an idea, because we do have to take that break, because I want to make sure we have plenty of time with Bobby and Cox. But if this goes to show you where the Democrat mindset is, Mehdi Hasan, a former MSNBC anchor, Mehdi Hasan, he reamed out President Biden and Attorney General Merrick Garland on Saturday for not putting former President Trump on trial before the election. In a scathing post on X over the weekend, goes to show you where their mindset is. Hassan said he will never forgive Biden and Garland for allowing Trump's trial on charges stemming from January 6th to be held after Election Day. No matter who wins or loses on Tuesday, I will never not stop being mad at Joe Biden and Merrick Garland for allowing Trump to face the electorate this week without having seen the inside of a courtroom for his crimes on and ahead of January 6th. Astonishing incompetence, caution, cowardice, and more from the top of the Democratic Party. They'll say it was to try and retain faith in an impartial DOJ, but even after giving Trump a pass, the Dems and the Biden DOJ are still accused of carrying out a witch hunt against Trump and of weaponizing the justice system against him. So what was actually gained? Well, if that doesn't give you an idea of the mindset of the left and what they will do if Trump is not victorious, it gives you just a quick glimpse into their mindset. We got to take a break. I see a lot of comments coming in. People are excited. We got one day until election. How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Coming up, we're going to talk with Bobby Ann Cox next. And then at the top of the hour, right around 7:15, 7:20, we're going to be talking with Mike Sapraicone. Mike Sapraicone is running for United States Senate against Senator Gillibrand. All right, we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this. Stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We're broadcasting from the Hesselstein studio, and joining me in the Zoom version of that studio, returning to Frankly Speaking, Bobby Ann Cox. Thanks so much for being on the program.
Yes, thanks for having me back on.
No, absolutely, because this has been really a major topic on this program, because I think there's such a lack of information on Prop 1. What do the viewers today, as they head into the election booth, what do they need to know?
Well, just realize that proposal number 1 on your ballot, no matter where you live in New York State, it's going to be on your ballot, really is not what it says.
Right.
On the ballot, you're just going to see a simple 2-sentence summary of what proposal number 1 really is. Unfortunately, the party in charge here in New York State passed a law last year allowing them to not show you the full language. It said the law that they passed says that they can just summarize what this proposed amendment to our Constitution says. But in doing that, you don't even get to read what actually would go into our Constitution. And so you can't really fully understand the implications just by reading the 2 sentences that are on your ballot.
Right.
So people need to understand, first of all, there's a whole paragraph that's left out. It's not referenced on the ballot. It's not described on the ballot. So that second paragraph of Proposal 1 is really dangerous. It gives the government the power to discriminate against us if they're doing so in the name of either reversing past discrimination, or if they say they're trying to prevent a future discrimination. So that paragraph B in and of itself is really dangerous. But then you have all the other language that's in paragraph A. Again, you don't see any of this on the ballot. And that paragraph A, if Prop 1 passes and becomes part of our Constitution, that paragraph A is going to give males a constitutional right to play in female sports.
Right.
It's going to give males a constitutional right to use female spaces like bathrooms, locker rooms, showers, dormitories. It's going to give immigrants, illegal immigrants included, the same rights as New Yorkers, and that can include the right to vote. And it's going to severely weaken parental rights. I mean, this thing is a Trojan horse like we've never seen before. People really need to vote no on Prop 1.
And I think there's a reason why they've kind of hidden the language, right? I mean, why would that ever be okay when you're talking about changing the New York State Constitution? Wouldn't you want the voter to be as informed as possible on that?
Absolutely. You really, really do want your voters to be informed if you're being fair and transparent. If you're trying to, shove down everybody's throat your agenda, then of course you want to hide what your real agenda is, right? Because you don't want everyone to know what your end game is. But this is why I have been crisscrossing New York State, trying to raise awareness and trying to educate the public about Prop 1. It's not what's on the ballot. It's not what they're selling it to be. The politicians pushing this are telling you it's all about abortion rights.
Right.
Oh, we have to save abortion rights. Vote for this thing. No. The word abortion's not even in proposal number 1. Abortion is fully codified in our New York state laws and has been for over 50 years. Right. And also, nobody's trying to take the right to an abortion away from you. I mean, New York has very lenient abortion laws, which are not under threat. And in New York today, you can get an abortion right up till the day of birth.
Right.
So it is really a farce. It is a hoax that they are pushing this by telling you that this is all about preserving abortion rights. It's not.
And if it was just about abortion rights, number one, why wouldn't it be worded that way or even mentioned? Number two, they know that could get passed through easily in the makeup of New York State. So if it were really just truly about that, wouldn't they have just made it about abortion?
Exactly. I did a study where I looked at the language in other states around the country that are trying to put on their or are putting on their ballot language to change their state constitutions if their population in their state wants to enshrine abortion rights in their constitution. And I read maybe a half a dozen or so other states' ballot proposals about abortion.
Right.
And every single one of them says you have the right to an abortion.
Yeah.
Period.
Right.
They use the word abortion. They use the word right. You have the right. Your right to an abortion shall not be infringed upon. They use those words, right and abortion. Here in New York, they're not using either one of those words.
No.
They're not giving you a right to anything. And the word abortion's not even in there. If you look at the language of proposal number 1, it says you can't discriminate against somebody based on, and then they give this list of 12 new protected classes that they want to put into our Constitution. They're restricting you. They're saying you cannot do this. You cannot discriminate against. Now, it sounds warm and fuzzy because nobody wants somebody else to be discriminated against. But you have to understand legally what that means. It means they are restricting you. And the language in Proposal 1 says you, not the government, you cannot discriminate. The government gets a free pass with that paragraph B language. They're allowed to discriminate against anybody for any reason, pretty much. But you, meaning you individually, and they use this word, your firms, your organizations, your corporations, so what does that mean? That means we the people and our companies and our places of worship and our organizations and our schools. We can't discriminate, they're saying, but the government can. So what that does is now it restricts you and it puts you into under their control.
Right.
And now they can tell you what you can say, what you can't say, what you can do, what you cannot do, the policies you can implement in your church or your synagogue. Or it's a horrendous attack on many of our rights, including freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom. I mean, it really is a Trojan horse.
And they really get to decide essentially what discrimination is, right? That's what gives them so much power in this. And I think it's interesting because it's typical for Albany and it's typical for Washington in many ways. When you read what you'll be voting on the back, I think most people, if they don't do their research, are going to say, well, I don't want to discriminate. I'm not someone that discriminates. And it's such a trick, that Albany's used forever and Washington as well. But in this case, Albany, to kind of convince the person that hasn't had the opportunity to find out more. Because really, if they don't find out about you, if they don't find out about a few certain outlets, would they even know what Prop 1 was?
No, that's the problem. Generally speaking, most New Yorkers go to the ballots and they don't even realize that there are these
I
proposals
know.
on there. And depending on which county you live in New York State, that will depend how many proposals you see on the back of your ballot.
Right.
Where I live, we have two proposals. There's a county near mine that only has Prop 1. They have no other proposals. Then you have New York City that has 5 or 6 proposals. So it depends on where you live in New York State as to how many proposals you'll see. But most people don't know those are on there ahead of time.
Right.
So they walk into the ballot box, they read these things, and then they try to make a split second decision on them. That's so dangerous in this case because, like you said, the politicians that crafted this used deceptive language on purpose
Right.
because I think they knew if they were going to be honest with New Yorkers and tell them about this radical agenda, this massive power grab by the government, I think most New Yorkers would have shot this down in 5 seconds.
I know. I also think it's very telling when the people that support this, the sign only just says vote yes. Have you noticed that? It doesn't give you any specifics, just like to try to keep it hidden in general. So I think that's very telling when you see people like you and others that want you to vote no. They've been very specific in where their fears are coming from and why they want you to vote no.
Definitely, definitely. I've seen signs around New York State in my travels,
I'm sure.
and I've seen signs that say "Save Girls Sports,"
Right.
vote no on Prop 1. I've seen signs that say "No legal rights for illegal migrants," vote no on
Right.
Prop 1. I've seen signs that say "Save parental rights," vote no on Prop 1. So you're right, there is a messaging here. I've been very vocal about this also online. I have a Twitter account and Instagram, and I constantly am posting about the various dangers of Proposal 1. I've also been writing about it in my Substack. I write a weekly Substack, and for the past, I don't know, 2 months, every week I'm writing about a new angle on Prop 1 and how dangerous it really is. So, yeah, this is the language we need to use. This is the awareness we need to raise as people are heading to the polls now.
And you've been touring around, speaking out on this for quite some time. What has the reaction been when people actually learn what Proposition 1 is?
Yeah, people are shocked.
Yeah.
They have no idea. Even when you read the language of the proposal itself, as opposed to the 2 sentences on the ballot, even if you read the language of Proposal 1, it is deceptive because, again, they make it sound good. It's, you shall not discriminate against anyone based on, and then it has all these categories: age, disability, ethnicity, national origin, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy outcomes, reproductive health care, and autonomy. I mean, it is a tremendous list, very broad language. And so you read it, you think it's okay because who wants to be mean and discriminate?
Right. Nobody.
But then you understand from a legal standpoint that when this is applied to New Yorkers in your everyday life, it means the government will be restricting anything you do, anything you say. They could target it and say, well, oh, that's hate speech. Now you're being accused of hate speech because you spoke out against one of these 12 new protected classes. And when you look at it, I mean, again, let's get a little bit of an example here. what does it mean to say that you can't discriminate based on age? Well, nobody wants our senior citizens to be discriminated
Sure.
against, right? And you hear age and you automatically think our elderly need to be protected.
Hmm.
They definitely do. But if you can't discriminate based on age, what happens to all the programs that we have in place to help our senior citizens
Right.
in New York State? All the discounts that we by law or by regulation apply to our senior citizens to help them. Now, are those going to be challenged?
Right.
Because now you can say, as a 30-year-old, well, hang on a second, you're discriminating against me because I'm 30.
Right.
You know, I want access to all those benefits for the senior citizens too.
Hmm.
Um, National origin. Okay, so you can't discriminate against somebody because they're from a different country. Okay, so now you're telling all the immigrants in New York State, whether they're legal or whether they're illegal, you have the same rights as New Yorkers.
Right.
And they're going to start implementing laws that take the resources and the privileges from the New York citizens, and they're going to shift them to those that are here from a foreign country, again, whether legally or illegally.
Right.
Um, and on the age note, hey, let's go the other direction with age. Now, all the laws we have that are in place to protect our children,
Right.
for example, statutory rape laws, now those are going to be called into question.
Yeah.
Are we going to now get rid of all of our laws that have age restrictions because you can't discriminate based on age? I mean, it's absolutely horrendous. Really, it's terrible.
If nothing else, think of the lawsuits and the cost of the lawsuits that'll be coming down after this, if this were to pass. Because, I mean, clearly, like you said, you mentioned, someone gets arrested for statutory rape. Instead of spending that much time in prison, why would they not take a chance and say, hey, you can't discriminate? It's so wrong. Or to your point about voting, well, why wouldn't someone try to go vote? And back to your point, too, and I think this is really interesting. You mentioned hate speech and the like, that they can decide if you're using hate speech. Think of how many times people have been mislabeled for quote unquote hate speech, that they can just ever change the definition of that.
Absolutely. The problem, not the problem, one of the problems
Right.
with Prop 1 is that the language is so broad,
Mm-hmm.
and the power shifts
Mm-hmm.
to the government under Prop 1.
Right.
And they can determine, like you said before, they can determine what is deemed hate speech, what is deemed discrimination.
Right.
And they become, really the judge, the jury, and they become the sheriff,
Right.
all in one. And you can't have that. We have separation of powers for a reason,
Mm-hmm.
and it's to protect we the people.
Right. Do you want Albany to have that kind of power is a question I would ask everybody to think for just a moment. Now, I know that you've had commercials running. You're very active in this. You've been touring all around the state. What has made you so passionate about it and being able to keep that passion?
Yes, well, I really do. I dislike when I see politicians lying to the people.
Right.
And I'm the type of person that fights for the little guy. I'm the type of person that fights for those who can't fight for themselves for whatever reason. And most New Yorkers, quite honestly, are too busy and too consumed with their lives that they don't understand what's going on around them, what the government is doing and trying to do. So it's really driving me to keep going and keep raising awareness as much as possible. It's absolutely unacceptable that we have politicians in charge in New York State who want to shove their agenda down our throats and not even be honest about it. They are hiding the language of Prop 1
Yes.
by not putting it on the ballot. They just put a 2-sentence summary, which doesn't tell you half the story. And they're also deceiving you because the language they use is not what would happen if Prop 1 passes.
Right.
We're not talking about a wonderful utopia where nobody gets discriminated against. We're talking about a tremendous power grab by the New York State government where they're going to get to tell you what is discrimination, what is not discrimination, what is considered hate speech, what is not considered hate speech. and they're going to become an authoritarian regime in this state, and the people of New York are going to suffer tremendously. It's already happening. We're already seeing these things happening. New York City passed a law 2 years ago saying
Right.
that non-citizens can vote. We have bills sitting in committee in Albany that will erase your parental rights. Giving children, there's one bill that gives children the power to make their own medical decisions
Right.
without parental knowledge or consent. It's absolutely unbelievable, and I'm not going to stand by and allow the politicians to deceive the people of New York. You want to enshrine abortion rights in our Constitution? Fine. Go back to the drawing board,
Right.
rewrite the language of Prop 1 to say you have the right to an abortion, period, and then put it to the people for a vote. But that's not what this is.
No, and there's no mistake that this happens to be during the national election, right? Everybody's focused on the big race. And as you said, and I don't knock anybody, because who on their free time wants to look up a ballot measure, right? And so you go in that booth, and that's why it gets. I'm not even being conspiratorial here. There's a clear reason why this has been done the way it's done. But before we go, a couple quick things. Where can people find out more and do their last minute research?
Yeah, so we have a website that we launched a couple weeks back. I really encourage people to check it out. It's at www.votenoonprop1.org, and that's the number one. So it's votenoonprop1.org. Check out the website. There's a lot of information on there. You can also go on social media. Prop 1, vote no on prop1.org. We also have X, we also have Facebook, we also have YouTube. So search for us on those three platforms. We have a commercial running on television. We have radio commercials running. We have digital ads running. So it's a pretty comprehensive PR campaign that we're pushing here.
Sounds it.
People can also follow me on Twitter. I'm constantly posting about Proposal 1. My Twitter handle is attorney_Cox, and that's spelled COX. Or you can just go on Twitter and search me, Bobby Ann Cox. But yeah, it's so important if people can take this information, follow me on Twitter or follow Vote No on Prop 1 on Twitter, repost the things that we're posting, follow us on Facebook. Spread our YouTube channel around. Really try to help us spread the word, because we're right here on top of election day almost, and we really need people to understand they need to vote no on Prop 1 because it is not what it's being sold to be.
Well, thank you so much for giving us so much time this morning, but also more importantly, thank you for all the hard work you've been doing just to spread the word and telling people to vote no. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time.
Of course. We'll be right back, but frankly speaking, stay with us. Hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to Bobby Ann Cox for being our guest this morning to tell us all about Proposition 1. I do have some comments here from viewers we're going to get to. And then in about 15 minutes or so, we'll be talking with Mike Sapraicone. Mike Sapraicone is running for United States Senator against Senator Gillibrand. So we'll be talking with him and see how the campaign is going. First up, some comments from viewers. Those animals did not have rabies. I would advise the owner to find a great attorney to do a pro bono case and file a lawsuit against Chemung County DEC and New York State, including Governor Kathy Hochul, for the mistreatment of innocent animals that had been rescued when they were babies and domesticated, but still with their good wild instincts in a way to be so playful with their owners. Shame on the DEC. A protest should be started as well. Get the illegal immigrants out of our country and leave innocent domestic and wildlife alone. The DEC are murderers, not necessary to kill innocent Peanut, the squirrel, and his buddy Fred the raccoon. And yes, I am an animal expert, including with wolves, all wild cats, domestic dogs, and cats. Certified dog behaviorist and trainer for 43 plus years, wow, who has also rehabbed injured wildlife such as birds and baby squirrels when I was younger, living in Connecticut and Hudson Valley, New York. I don't currently rehab wildlife, but if I came across an injured animal, especially a baby squirrel, raccoon, or fox, etc., I'd get the animal to a rehab animal sanctuary as I no longer have the time. Thank you very much for that comment. Another comment. Obviously, Hochul is a child. Can she be impeached before her and her regime cause further damage to New York State? That's a great question. I mean, she could. That's quite a process. I think she's up for election, 2 years? Next up, a big thanks to Bobby Ann Cox for doing all she can to get the word out on Prop 1. Thank you. Yes, thank you to Bobby Ann Cox for being on the program. And like you say, putting in all the work, the mileage alone that they put in, her and Senator Borrello and others to speak out on Proposition 1 has been just great and remarkable. Next up, another comment. I'd also like to thank Elmira Mayor Dan Mandel for his words at the conclusion of the Chemung County Trump train yesterday, as well as the Hitching Post venue and Wheelers who provided food and entertainment. Full disclosure, I'm a Steuben resident, but was invited along. I'm glad you had a good time. How was it? How was the event? I'm glad we had an opportunity to bring it up a few times on this program to promote it. Another comment, Frank. Great interview with Bobby Ann Cox. I now understand why I couldn't find more info on Proposition 1. It highlights the deceit of the Democrats. Unfortunately, in New York, the prop will probably pass due to New York City, Albany, Syracuse, Rochester, and Buffalo. It could, though. Some have said that those on the left even aren't that supportive of it, but I have a bad feeling if you read the way it's worded on the ballot that, yes, at the end of the day, it probably will pass, but that doesn't mean we don't all go out and vote no. Kamala Harris is warning it will take time to count every vote. The margins are going to be close, but our campaign is on track to win this election. Americans all across the country are casting their votes in record numbers, ready to turn the page. It'll take time to count every vote, and there may be swings in the count along the way. Tim Walz saying that Donald Trump is a dictator trying to overturn the Constitution. You're going to be in that rocking chair, and a little one is going to come up to you after being in school where they were studying the 2024 election. And they're going to ask when everything was on the line and the American experiment was on the line, and there was somebody running who asked to be a dictator and to overturn the Constitution and talk about using the military against our own people. What did you do to stop that from happening? And you're going to be able to say everything we could. Everything we could. Okay. Now, Senator Fetterman, John Fetterman, was on CNN's State of the Union on Sunday talking about Pennsylvania. And Dana Bash asked him, so tomorrow Kamala Harris will spend the last full day of the campaign only in Pennsylvania. She's going to be in Allentown, Pittsburgh, and in Philadelphia. There's 48 hours left in this race. When Trump won Pennsylvania, you said your party wasn't connecting with voters enough. What are you seeing now? Are you seeing any of the same warning signs in 2024? He said, no, there's nothing new here. I said the same thing in 2016. I said it will be close. There's an issue there. And I said it before, and I said it's going to be close in 2020, and it was. I have been saying this. When it was Biden or Harris, it was going to be very close. And Trump definitely has a connection with voters here in Pennsylvania. That's why it's going to be very close. But there's a tremendous amount of energy for Harris, too. Yesterday I was in Erie and with the president and with President Clinton, and I was in Butler County as well. The energy is really strong. I just met a whole bus of volunteers from Rochester, New York, and they were showing up and knocking on doors for Harris. Here's a comment from a viewer here. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning. And happy election eve. Happy election eve. Thank you for helping me survive this election season with my sanity mostly intact. Well, good. I early voted for the first time ever after hearing you and other viewers talk about it. Thanks again and looking forward to post-election shows. P.S. I voted against Prop 1 before voting for candidates. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the kind words. It's going to be interesting. Tomorrow will be fun. We'll have a fun show. No guests lined up for the next few days, obviously. This is kind of the last minute interviews. That's why Mike Sapraicone asked for today. As a rule, no one really wants to do an interview on Election Day unless you really, really need it. So I look forward to talking with Mike Sapraicone. Thank you so much for the nice words. We got to take a short break. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. The Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking. I do have to take another short break because I see that Mike Sapraicone is on the Zoom line, so I have to get that all set up. But here first, a comment from a viewer. If they knocked on my door asking for a vote for Harris, I would ask for the policies she wants to implement. besides just giving money away. It wouldn't do any good, but if everyone asked them to define their policies and her positions on virtually anything besides abortion, they would have no answers. Yes, not really a campaign of substance, so to speak. That has been definitely a criticism of Vice President Harris. What did you think about NBC having her on Saturday Night Live? There has been some pushback. NBC News filed an equal time notice with the Federal Communications Commission late Sunday, disclosing Kamala Harris's appearance on Saturday Night Live after the network was accused of violating the long-standing rule. Kamala Harris, the Democratic candidate for president in the 2024 national election, appeared without charge on NBC's Saturday Night Live for a total period of 1 minute and 30 seconds on November 2nd, 2024, the notice read. Under normal circumstances, the filing would allow other qualified candidates competing against Harris to seek equal airtime from NBC for up to a week. NBC would be required to grant under federal law. The notice comes after Commissioner Brendan Carr, the senior Republican on the FCC, lambasted NBC's decision to host Harris in the final episode of Saturday Night Live ahead of Election Day, while not offering equal time to former President Trump or other candidates in the presidential cycle. This is all the appearances of at least some leadership at NBC at Saturday Night Live, making clear that they wanted to weigh in favor of one candidate before the election. That's exactly why for decades we've had an equal time rule on the books. It is to prevent this. Because remember, broadcasters are placed in a special position of trust. They're not just like any other person with a soapbox on the corner. They have a license from the federal government that obligates them to operate in the public interest, according to Carr. The NBC filing later Sunday confirms that the network views the Harris SNL appearance as a free use of their facilities and airwaves within the meaning of the federal equal time rule. In normal equal time cases, it would usually open up a 7-day period when all other qualified candidates can seek equal time from NBC, meaning comparable time on a comparable program. Here, opposing candidates don't have 7 days. Let's take that break because we got Mike Sapraicone coming up, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. And in that studio via Zoom, we have our good friend Mike Sapraicone. Thanks so much for being on the program. There you go. It was good. Last time you were you were in the area all weekend, weren't you?
I was in Western New York, the Southern Tier, all day Saturday. I teamed up with Nick Langworthy, our great congressman from that area, and we hit about every place we could throughout the Southern Tier in Western New York.
Oh, he does a great job. How was it hanging out with him all day? Fun?
Oh, it was great.
Yeah.
It was great. Once in a while, I got to talk in front of him. Sometimes I got to follow him. So always a good learning experience. No one does it better than Nick up there.
No. And how's things been going in the campaign? Last time we talked, I can't believe it's already here. Last time we talked, you were at the Chemung County Fair. Here we are a day before Election Day.
Well, it's been going great. We've been all over the place. I started out Wednesday evening in Nassau County for a rally for the Nassau County candidates with Speaker Mike Johnson.
Oh, wow, that's great.
So talking about how important the House is this year and what we need to do here in New York. And then we followed that up Thursday by going up to Rockland to speak up there. And then we wound up in Greene County on Friday talking about Mark Marinaro's race over in Greene County.
That's a tight one, right? That's a real close one.
It's a real close one, and it just shows how important New York State is to the House of Representatives, and that's why Speaker Johnson was all over the place.
Yeah.
And then we left Greene and headed out to Buffalo. We did something early Saturday morning with Congressman Langworthy, and then did the tour till about 8:30 at night. Let me tell you something. I thought I was an endless kind of guy, could work all day. Nick was out there everywhere, just driving around and talking to everybody and shaking hands.
Yeah.
And then yesterday we kind of finished up by going to Delaware County for another rally there and then heading back to Nassau. And in about another hour or two, I'll be up in Westchester County.
Oh, okay.
Having a press conference with Mike Waller. So I'm having a great time, and I told you that last time, Frank. The issues are basic, right? The issues are simple. It's about cost of living and what it costs on Thanksgiving Day this year compared to last year and the year before.
Right.
It's about crime and illegal immigration. And we know that I tie them together, okay? And look at the terrible things. I'm going to speak at a press conference in Westchester about a terrible murder that happened with an illegal immigrant who killed his girlfriend's son last week. And so these are things that have to be stopped. We have the right to have food on our table and be able to live okay and be able to work one job and provide for our family. We have the right to be safe in our homes and to be safe on our streets. And we have the right to be hardworking legal immigrants in this country.
Right.
And that's what our parents have done, our grandparents have done, and we spoke about this before. But not to have illegal immigrants come into this country and commit crimes. And I said this to my opponent last week in a debate up in Albany.
Yeah.
I said, I admired her, and I said I praised her for the great work she's done with sexual assault victims, especially in the military. But how in good conscience can you expect, after allowing close to 20,000 convicted murderers and rapists into this country over the last several years, and she's the main player in this terrible crisis, how could she expect New Yorkers to trust her, yet alone re-elect her?
Right.
And she had no answer for that.
You did a great job on the debate, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
But you mentioned that. What do you think? Now, you're running against Gillibrand, so this is obviously somebody different. But what did you think about Governor Hochul's recent comments that if you vote Republican, you're anti-American, anti-woman, et cetera?
Yeah, I'm so sick of all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous. Come on, how can you say that? Half the country voted for Donald Trump 4 years ago. And now, Biden's called us garbage, okay? Clinton called us despicable,
Right.
8 years ago. How can you even have the gall to say this? And what is she doing?
Yeah.
She's splitting this state and this country. She's making a great divide along with her and Harris. It's time it stops. Listen, we got to get down to reality. 4 years ago, were we better today than we were 4 years ago? In any category, no.
No.
Except for maybe having less money. Okay? So we certainly have less money now than we did 4 years ago.
Right.
But it's out of control. She's the governor of the state of New York. Are you kidding? Think about what you say before you speak, okay? That's we teach that to our kids.
Right.
Okay? How do you say terrible things like that? It's appalling.
Well, isn't it something about her desperation? Because she obviously did so poorly last time when it came to the House, right? And they lost the House because of the job that she did. So she's out there trying to be kingmaker, but she just doesn't have it.
Right. Pelosi beat her up last time
I know.
for not being able to win. And she's not going to win this time.
No.
Let me tell you, she's not going to win this time.
No.
We're going to keep the House, and it'll be right here in New York State. We're going to, Donald Trump will win the presidency come Wednesday morning when you wake up. We may know late Tuesday. Okay? This thing could be crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to tell you, we're going to surprise everybody because nobody in this country, nobody thinks that New York is going to be the state that's going to turn the United States Senate. And when we wake up on Wednesday morning, we're going to have the first Republican senator in over 25 years right here in New York State. And I promise you, Frank, I will be the senator for every single person in this state. I don't care what affiliation you have. I care about this state. I care about this country. And listen, I've been an endless worker my whole career as a police officer, as a detective, and as a business owner. I've got a lot of energy and a lot of years to do this, and I'm ready to go. I'm excited. I'm really excited.
When you've been on the campaign trail, has there been anything that's kind of surprised you?
I don't know if it's a surprise, but everybody's saying to me, who are you running against? Who are you running against? What's his name? Is it Chuck?
Yeah.
And I say, no, it's not Chuck. It's the other senator. Well, what's his name? I say, her name is Kirsten Gillibrand.
Right.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of her.
Yeah.
But you know what? I told you this before, and I say this all over the campaign trail. As an ex-detective, if you put her in a lineup, you can't pick her out.
No, that's true.
And part of that reason is she's become a Washington politician. And she no longer cares about what's going on here in New York State, about the people who elected her, okay, the people that put her there 3 times. And so it's embarrassing. When I talk to people, they haven't seen her.
No.
They haven't, especially after she ran for president in 19.
That's
no
right.
one's seen her at all.
Yeah.
You need a representative that's going to talk to you, that's going to listen to the constituents, that wants to have a conversation with you and wants to understand what your needs are. And, you know me, I could talk for hours.
Right.
But I did learn to listen as a school board president in Long Island, and it's important to listen. There's something going on in this state and in this country, and you can feel it. I was at the rally with the president back in this early summer or late spring in the Bronx.
Oh, yeah.
I was with him in Nassau County in September, and I was with him last week in Madison Square Garden. These are like being in high school watching pep rallies.
Yeah.
On Monday Night Football, right? He likes to chat. He's a bigger chatter than I am, okay? But when he's on point, he's on point. And when he's focused and when he talks issues, it's common sense. That's all it is. And everybody in this state wants common sense.
Right.
I don't care what party you belong to. everybody here, these are New York issues and American issues. They're not Democrat, Republican, conservative issues. They're New York issues. And that resonates with people. I always I'm a cop guy, so that's important to me. But people aren't aware that in the last 7 years in this state, between Cuomo and Hochul's parole commissioners, they've released 42 cop killers.
Wow.
42 cop killers, murderers, assassins of law enforcement in this state alone.
Wow.
It's unacceptable. The governor thinks that people deserve a second chance. How about those families who never got a second chance? How about those children who grew up without a father or a mother? How about every time those families have to go in front of that parole board, they have to relive that terrible, terrible day or night when their husband or wife or father or brother or son or mother was killed? Not fair. And we can't allow that. It's not acceptable.
Well, isn't it much like bail reform, too, where they've created victims that didn't need to be victims? Do you know what I mean? I mean, think of how many people have been victimized numerous times because of these failed public safety policies of this administration.
Well, someone accused me of why am I so concerned about bail reform and bail laws and cashless bails. I'm going to be a United States Senator. Right. You can't be a United States Senator for the people of New York if you don't care about the problems and issues going on in the state. It makes no sense. But it goes back to my opponent who wants to talk about all the federal things she's done. Well, that's important. But what's important is dealing with New York and holding New York responsible. They didn't bring anybody to talk about this. When Cuomo decided to change this years ago, he based everything on the legislators. Okay, they knew everything. There were no police commissioners. There were no sheriffs. There were no district attorneys. There were no law enforcement brought to the table to discuss this. And people don't realize we're looking at a recidivist situation.
Right.
We don't have 10,000 crimes with 10,000 criminals. Right. And again, I'm making up numbers. We have 10,000 crimes with 300 criminals.
Right.
The same criminals are committing these crimes, and they're just going through the wheels of justice, in and out of the revolving doors. I learned 40 years ago when I became a cop, criminal justice, it's justice for the criminal, okay? And that's what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing.
It's interesting you mentioned that so many people don't even really know that Gillibrand is our senator. And I got to thinking, I saw a couple of her ads, so you must have her nervous, right? She's putting the ads out. And it was kind of a shock to remember at that point that she is our senator. She's so quiet except for this time of year.
Well, I think she spent somewhere near $10 to $12 million over the course of 4 weeks. But it's all about people in front of politics. That's what she says. And I question that. Because you have to know the people,
right?
To put them in front of the politics,
right?
She doesn't know the people, and they don't know her. And I would say, I'm not saying she's running scared, but I'll certainly say, Frank, that she's certainly concerned, and rightfully so, because I think there's going to be a big surprise come 2 more days from now.
Yeah, because you can't. I mean, she's not looking to just waste money, right? There's a reason why she's spending that money, and she must feel that you are, at the very least, nipping at her heels, right?
I would think so. And we had a little bit of a toe-to-toe thing in the debate, if you remember, where she said to me, let me explain to you, I'm the senator, and this is the way it is. And I said, well, that's maybe for the next 2 weeks or so, Senator. And that could all change in a few weeks.
Right.
We got a few laughs in the crowd. But listen, I think she's certainly aware this is a race.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we've worked really hard. All the candidates always work hard. But I think getting my name out there and not being a guy who's ever done this before, just being a detective and a business owner, I think people are resonating with, hey, this guy's got a shot here.
Right.
Every place I go, people are hey, you're that guy Mike the cop guy, right? You're that guy Mike the cop.
Yeah.
People are starting to recognize me. I'm surprised. I went into a store the other day and someone said, hey, aren't you that senator guy? And I said, in a few more weeks I will be. And they smiled, they want to shake your hand. I'm getting a great reception everywhere I go in the state. I did not expect that.
Right. How many miles do you think you put on your car?
Oh, about 32,000.
Is that right?
Just to guess a little bit. And that's in the last 6.5, 7 months.
Wow.
But I've gotten such great receptions from everywhere. And even when I hear people say, I'm not going to talk to you because you're a Republican, because when I start my spiel, I am Mike Sapraicone, I'm the Republican conservative candidate for the United States Senate.
Sure.
I'm not talking to you. And I just say, okay, well, all right, let's just have a conversation. Yeah. Do you know who I'm running against? Yeah, Chuck. No. And then we go from there. And I'm really happy that most people will say, I'll say at the end, after I give my spiel and I talk a little bit to them and tell them about what I've done in my past and what I plan to do in the future, they'll say, well, we'll look you up.
Oh.
We'll read about you. That's a win.
Oh, yeah.
Yet somebody who told me they wouldn't even talk to me 5 minutes ago because I'm a Republican or a conservative, to have them say, well, we'll look you up, and then shake my hand
Yeah.
and tell me their first names. That's a big deal. That's a big deal.
Have you found anybody able to defend Gillibrand when you've had conversations? Has anybody been able to say, no, she's really good at X, Y, or Z?
I've heard some people say she's just been really good to us, and I say, how?
Yeah.
Because she's been our senator for so long. And I say, okay,
Yeah.
I get it for so long, but you can't even tell me what she's done.
No.
And I think because she follows Schumer's coattails so much that she isn't out there.
No.
It doesn't matter even if she was, and she's not. Everybody only talks about Schumer.
Right.
And I look forward. I got to tell you, I look forward to getting down to Washington and saying to Schumer, hello, Senator Schumer, how are you? I'm Mike Sapraicone. I'm the new senator from New York State, and we need to sit down and work together to do what the people of New York State want. And if you can't go along with that program, Senator, then you're going to have a big issue in 4 more years, and you're going to have a big issue with me, because I'm going to do whatever I can for everybody in this state. And I look forward to that, and we'll see how that goes. But again, I'm excited.
That'll be a fun conversation. What was it that led you to decide to run? Because as you said, you haven't done this before, and this isn't easy.
Well, I think it's easier than being a cop.
Oh, well, that's true.
I did that for 20 years, and I love that. Well, I think public service is important. We've talked about, I'm on a lot of different boards, from school boards to charity boards and different boards, hospital boards, museum boards. I think it's important to have a seat at the table and bring something to the table. And in business for years and years, I was able to bring my clients together for best practices. I'm concerned about this country for my children, my 5 children, and my 5 grandchildren. And everybody says it's the most important election. They're all important elections. But this is not about left and right. This is about right and wrong. This is about common sense. This is about the ability to think and stop restricting us as Americans, as citizens. The Constitution is not for the government to restrict us. It's for us to keep an eye on the government.
Right.
That's what we need to do in this country. I just think this is a great opportunity. New York is the greatest state in the nation. I don't care what anybody says. I'm a New York kid, born and bred. To have this platform and to let it sit down like the last 15 years and not stand up and speak up for both representatives in this state is wrong. We need to do that. One-party system is not working here in this state, and Lee Zeldin showed that 2 years ago.
Right.
He set the foundation for me to win tomorrow, okay? I think we'll have a great victory at the presidency tomorrow. We'll keep the House of Representatives. We'll be the seat to turn the Senate, and we will start to turn New York State. Because when I win tomorrow and Trump wins this state, and I think he believes he can win this state. It might have looked better with Biden, but I think Biden was a better candidate than Harris is. So I think he'll win this state. We'll shock everybody tomorrow. And then 2 years from now, we'll be putting up a candidate for the United States, for the New York's governor. And we'll shock this state. And we will bring New York State back to the great prosperity, the great common sense, and great leadership. I mean, we have such great leadership here. So those are important things. And how do you not want to be part of that?
Right, that's true.
How do you not want to be part of that?
That's true. How was it at Madison Square Garden?
Oh, it was great.
Yeah.
I've been to the Garden for Knicks games,
Oh,
Ranger
sure.
games, college basketball games my whole life.
Yeah.
I'm a Queens kid. It was great. It was just great. It was exciting. The crowd outside was amazing.
Yeah.
NYPD did a great job, as always. I mean, I'm biased, but they did a great job. The crowds were just crazy. It was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun.
It looked fun. I was disappointed because I watched, of course, when it was happening, and I was disappointed with the way that the media tried to relabel it. As you know how it is when you walk away feeling something, and then you say, "Wait a minute, they're telling me the complete opposite. What happened here? What am I missing?"
Well, they do it all the time.
Yep.
They do it all the time. It's so interesting. You turn on one channel and you listen to a story, and you turn on another channel and you say, "Is that the same story?"
I know.
Was I at that place? Did I just listen to this or that?
Yeah.
We've got to stop this. This is not unifying this country. We need to unify this country. We certainly all do have more in common than we think.
I agree.
Growing up, when I grew up, No one ever asked me if I was a Democrat or a Republican.
Yeah.
So when people do ask that now, I love to say I'm an American, because that's what I am, and that's what I will always be. It's important to have an affiliation, I think, but it's important to bring common sense and work together with people. Why can't you work with people? Most people, when you sit down and talk to them, they want to engage. They want to have a conversation. Some people want to just talk and want you to listen. There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes they just need a place to go to express their feelings because nobody is listening to them.
Right.
I'm okay with that. I could listen for hours.
Right.
Okay. Well, my kids tell me I'm not good at that, but I think I am. But I mean, these are the important things: common sense, getting together with people, representing the people that elect you. Gillibrand is concerned about wanting to be the person in the Senate, the Democratic leader in the Senate, to go out there and get more senators, to raise more money to get more Democratic senators throughout this country. Well, why aren't you worrying about your state?
Right.
Now, let's start off with the state. Let's worry about, she wants to reimagine ICE, Frank. And how about reimagining New York State? How about reimagining what's going on here in the state? How about stopping the governor from sending $5 billion downstate to get credit cards, debit cards?
It's unbelievable.
Right, for the illegal immigrants. What about our veterans who are homeless, who are sleeping on the street? What about our homeless people? There's a problem there. We need to solve those problems before we go solving the rest of the problems. And then you talk about leadership in this country. I spent 4 days in Israel back in September, and I visited the southern border because I think it's important before you speak on those issues to try to understand them, not just talk off the top of your head.
Right.
And we need to support Israel. Israel is not just fighting for Israel, they're fighting for America. Anybody who thinks what happened on October 7th in 2023 couldn't happen here is blind, is not paying attention. We've had so many people of fighting age come into this country that we don't even know where they are. We can't locate them. We don't have a plan for illegal immigration, so we can't have a plan B because we don't have a plan A. But that's what this government does. We jump. We pander to our bases. We worry about that. We don't worry about what we need to do here before we jump into projects. Let's think about things. And this is what I've spoke about in my debate the other night also. There's a lot of things we have to look at and revamp. And let's take a look at the situation and see where we're wasting funding.
Right.
Where we could do a better job. What my opponent and her party tends to do is let's just cut that and start with this. Well, you don't pay attention. You don't put a plan together how to do that. And then you have that domino effect where it starts hurting people. I mean, she's talking about, increasing the minimum wage. Well, everybody should have a decent wage. But as a small business owner, do you realize what that does to a small Taco Bell, whether it's a franchise or a hardware store, where you're paying part-time people a high wage? Your margins are going down. How do you survive? She's never had a business. I've had to tell my family many times over the 30-some years in business, this is a really tough month for us. We're not getting paid. I've got to pay my employees. If I don't pay my employees, I don't have a business. And we don't have the success that we've had. So sometimes you have to eat those. I remember going many times without a paycheck.
Sure.
And just making sure that my employees got paid. And I don't think she understands small business is what generates this economy. That will bring inflation down. That will bring jobs up. We need to bring incentives to this state. And I use the example of what happened with Amazon several years ago with AOC.
Right, that's right.
Long Island City. That would have brought 20,000 jobs to that local area, right, into the city. We turned that down because they're a big company who makes a lot of money. Why should we give them incentives? Well, that's what you do.
Right.
That's what a business person does. You make a deal. You bring in a business, you give them incentives, and you reap the benefits from that. And it all washes out over time, okay? And if you don't understand that, how can you run a government?
Right.
How can you successfully run a business? And we need, look at Trump. Trump's a business guy, okay? He understands how to run a business. You need to stand tall. And then you talk about us as a leader in this country, right? And somebody said to me, well, if Trump was the president, would we have what happened in Ukraine and what happened in Israel? I can't say for a fact that wouldn't happen, but what I could say is when he was president, we didn't have these problems. And I'm concerned. I'm concerned that after we win on Tuesday, what will happen in the next 2 months here? Okay? What are these actors, these foreign actors, just waiting to do? What are they going to do? Are they going to take advantage of a situation where we have a lame duck for 2 months? I mean, you already have North Korea working with Russia in Ukraine. We need to support our allies. We need to see Ukraine get stronger and get into NATO. We need to be 100% behind Israel because they're fighting for not just Israel but us, like I said before, and that's important.
When you've been, because you have put so many miles on the car and you've been to all these campaign stops, what is the number one concern that people bring to your attention?
I think economy.
Yeah, it is.
Everybody's concerned about economy. Illegal immigration doesn't fall far behind because you go up into like the Erie, Niagara, the Western New York area, and you see a lot of situations up there. We have kids in the schools, and these poor neighborhoods, these poor cities, they have enough problem paying for their education and paying for their housing on their own. But now we're bringing in, I think Erie and Niagara had 500 illegal immigrants in the school system. That's a big strain on a school system.
It sure is.
They're small systems. And who's paying for that? And Adam said he was paying for it, and he pulled the money out of it.
Yeah.
Okay. And now there's the latest thing is that they're bringing down out of upstate New York, they're going to take all the illegals out. But I think that's a volunteer thing.
Yeah.
First of all, why would you want to leave?
Right.
Why would you want to leave a great area like Erie or Niagara? Anywhere, why would you want to leave those areas? So I think that's just a lot of garbage. And again, we're a couple of days before Election Day. Will that still be here next week? I don't know.
Right. That's a good question. Well, before we go, where can people find out more about your campaign?
MikeSapraicone4Senate.com and get out there. We need your help. With the last couple, we're down to, I don't know, less than 48 hours here. So, everybody, we did a great job in New York State getting out that early vote. So proud of us to do that. We got to get those absentee ballots in. And we got to get out there and vote. We got to drag all our friends, all our neighbors, all our relatives, make sure they go out and vote tomorrow. No voting today. Today's the day to prepare. And we'll be out there all over the place getting that done. But we need you to get out and vote. And I'm excited. And I look forward, Frank, to be your senator when you wake up on Wednesday morning.
Well, I look forward to it. I look forward to having you on the show as the senator. Right before we go, what would you say to voters before they head to the booth tomorrow?
Get out and vote common sense. Get out and vote common sense. Trump, Sapraicone, all your congressmen, all your Republican congressmen, and right down the line, because this is about grassroots. This is about those state senators, the state assemblymen, your local officials. They're the ones with common sense. They're the ones who are working hard for this great state of New York. And I love New York, and I'm so proud to be, so humbled to be the candidate. And Frank, always great to be up in Western New York in the Southern Tier and get to talk to you.
Well, it's great talking to you. And I got to say, your pens last a long time. I've been using it every day.
Great. Well, they're great pens. And we'll make sure we get a lot more up to you once we win.
All right, perfect. Mike, thanks so much. Best of luck tomorrow.
Thanks, Frank. I appreciate it.
All right. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking. Stay with us. And we are back. Frankly Speaking, Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact Boss Security for all your business and home security needs. Thanks again to Mike Sapraicone for being our guest this morning. I know they were out busy. I didn't realize he was out with Congressman Langworthy over the weekend. They did a lot of campaign stops, so it's nice that he could join us on the program. Comment from a viewer. Gillibrand stated she knew nothing about her job when she took office. She has done nothing for New York, only her party. She still knows nothing, and it shows. Thank you very much. What are your thoughts about Saturday Night Live, A.G. Genkarski? And we got to take another break. We have to catch up because I like talking with Mike Sapraicone, but we ran a little bit late. And I enjoyed talking with Bobby Ann Cox, but we had two very long interviews this morning in a good way. But I had to play a little bit of catch up here. But A.G. Genkarski at the New York Post says, live from New York, it's election interference. We're going to talk about that when we come back, so stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Boss Security Cam. Contact Boss Security today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking as we're broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Let's read some viewer comments. Frank, on the lighter side of everything, I have to tell you what I think every time I write or hear the name Frank. Okay. I was a big fan of the TV show Hill Street Blues, of course. One of the main characters was Police Captain Frank Furillo. Is that how you say that? He had a lot of interaction with the leader of a Mexican gang, Jesus Martinez. Every time Jesus met with Frank, he would greet him by saying, "Hey, Frankie." I like it. I've been greeted that way as well. Next up, a different viewer, excuse me. Cool. Frank, Mike makes pens great again. Go Trump. That's Mike Sapraicone, who was just on the program running for United States Senator. Yes, he dropped these off. Last time he was in studio was with the Sherman County Fair. They've lasted remarkably well. I've been very happy. I got a few of them. I've been using them. Okay, next up, different comment. What a great interview with Mike Sapraicone. I'm now optimistic about his chances of winning, especially that he is a New York City candidate, which I believe will really help out the upstate voters. Thank you very much. Yeah, Mike Sapraicone, this was the second time we had him on. The first time he happened to be in studio. They reached out to me on Friday and asked if he could be on again today. Of course, I enjoy talking to him. I think he could just do the show by himself. I don't think he needs me. He does a good job. Live from New York, it's election interference, according to the New York Post. For months, the election's trajectory had been clear. It comes down to swing states. And to put it more bluntly, late deciding, low information voters in those states whose political convictions sway like palm fronds in a tropical breeze. If you want to reach those voters, those pop culture saturated ones who respond to vibes rather than their bank balances or credit card obligations tell them, the best place to do so is in the dumbest comedy show on television. Again, this is coming from A.G. Genkarski. And in that sense, from form meant function, with Kamala Harris appearing on Saturday Night Live in what may be her most effective campaign ad of the cycle, one that only required her to divert a flight to New York in time for the sketch. SNL has never been subtle about its political leanings. If you recall when they had that weird version of the Hillary Clinton character on Saturday Night Live singing Hallelujah after Trump won. But Saturday Night showed what a vengeance with Donald Trump, who was not invited on the show, parodied before Mayor Rudolph Harris began her cringe plus interaction with the real thing. The groan-inducing gags about the imitator and the real thing and their belief in the promise of America didn't stand up as actual comedy, but that wasn't the point. Another effect of this is the skit for the vice president. It allowed her to erase skipping the Al Smith dinner, where she could have roasted Trump in person had she not had one of her famous scheduling conflicts. And it allowed her to do so with a much bigger audience than tuning into cable news streams of the Catholic Showcase event. What's the value of this in-kind contribution? One that clearly didn't permit Trump equal time, sidestepping a concern Saturday Night Live creator Lorne Michaels voiced weeks ago, pointing out how problematic it would be to bring the actual people who are running on because of election laws and the equal time provision. Federal Communications Commissioner Brendan Carr is on point when he spotlights the Harris showcase as a clear and blatant effort to evade the FCC's equal time rule. And this weekend, it pushed all its chips towards the Democrat ticket, meaning SNL. If Trump loses Tuesday, will sketch comedy not staying in lane be to blame? All right, we are out of time for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Some people are saying the skit was so bad that even her SNL skit was plagiarized. Some calling it cringeworthy. She can't even do Saturday Night Live right. The cringe is too much. November 5th can't come fast enough. Well, that does it for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Donald Trump has erased the deficit against Kamala Harris in the final pre-election post poll. The race is close. Henry Olsen saying that he believes Trump wins the Electoral College and possibly the popular vote. Renowned election guru Nate Silver calls it a pure toss-up, as he gave President Trump a slight edge over Harris in his latest forecast. Silver's model shows Trump has a 51.5% chance of winning. Well, thank you again to Bobby Ann Cox for being on the program this morning, as well as Mike Sapraicone. Bobby Ann Cox opposed to Opposition 1, so I wanted to find out all about Opposition 1. I appreciate her being on the show. I want to thank Mike Sapraicone, running for United States Senator. Appreciate him coming on the show twice now. We look forward to having him on in the future. Well, have a great day. It's hard to believe tomorrow is the big day. We'll have all the time together. No more guests. It's just you and I. So please join us every weekday morning starting at 6 a.m. for Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV. Big Fox. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you on Election Day.